Here we are looking at static file type files that have to be created. Two of them in particular. One a command file and the other is a command test file. In order to do that, we should go into static files over here and follow these basic steps. The first thing you want to do is copy a sample of each to the static directory, and then you want to update your config to be able to support this. And it's not surprising that you're going to also have to work with the NS file, because after all, since each code base has different requirements for how many of these commands they're going to have, it makes sense that they're going to have to specify it over there as well. Then you can generate to make sure that you're generating the files that you need, even though they're not set up right. And finally, you add specs, which is an element of the context that we're going to deal with for creating those. So in this video, we're just going to do the first 3 steps, and then we're going to spend one more video showing how you can add the specs that you need to get the content that's correct. Let's go back to our files that we're generating here. In the command directory, we have to have the command, and then in test commands, we have to have the test. Let's do step 1 right now to copy over from where we need to where we need. So let's open again the Projectory sample. We want to make a copy of test commands, and it doesn't matter which one we do. We'll do pull. This is very similar to what we did before. Before we were sticking into standard, now we're sticking into static. However, there's a couple differences. One thing is we only need one example and we're going to generate them all. Another thing is, rather than just attaching WHBS, we need to come up with a name for this file type. So let's call it command file, and then you have to append the HBS as before. That is a command file. We're also going to need, let me rename that one. Inside of static, yeah, this is a test file. Great, let's call this test. Let's rename this to be command test. Okay, then the second one will come from source commands, and I guess we'll stick with pull. Okay, again, we want to call this a generic name for the file type, command file. We'll rename that command file.hbs. Okay, that was step 1 already. Now, step 2 is you create the config and the NS files. So what we need to do is come up with a static specification. You can use this as your sample. Inside of our config, we need to add a new section, static, and here we come up with a static type. So we're calling this command, and for each type you have potentially more than one. You might just have one file type. For each file type, this is pretty important, you have a name that uses double underscores slug, double underscores, somewhere inside of it. The simplest is to do what I've done here, and just we're naming the file push and pull, for instance. So if the slug is push, then it's going to be push and the suffix .ts. Here are the suffixes .test.ts. And of course we could put test up in here and make the suffix .ts. It doesn't matter. The directory has to be specified as well. We have source commands and we have test commands. Good. So now that works on the side of the template, but of course in order to generate any of these, we need to say them on the side of the. So we can do this in any order we want. We have to create it in our sample NS, but that's not going to directly do anything. And then we have to create it in our code. If we wanted to, in our code NS file. Allow me to introduce you to the code NS file, which when it was created from the sample, so it doesn't have anything more than the sample should have in it. But let's just look at that. Here is the meta directory, and here's the NS file. And it does have actually information about the template used. This is probably going to change very soon. NSFlip is probably soon going to have the template information stored in the meta directory as well. But for now, the template is referring to the location of the template somewhere else locally. And there's a code name and a user class. You can name that whatever you want. The starter currently is also included there. We have to add in a specification of each instance of the static type that we've created. So here in the NS file, static command, we have to say, well, we want one for push and one for pull. And you have to have the slug as well. So those right now are sufficient to be able to produce something. Now we also can put in specs, but right now we don't have the specs in there. We don't need them yet. We'll develop them as soon as we need them. This is the NS. So let's go back into our template, and I want to update this as well here, because that way if we generate again, we want to keep it up to date, because somebody who is using the template is going to be looking at this and want to know, what should I put in here? So this is the example. that they'll have unless we develop another one. And also, if for whatever reason we want to recreate code from scratch, this will go into it. So it's good to keep it up to date. Now let's just do step 3 right now already and generate, because we want to make sure that we haven't made any mistakes here. What should happen is when we generate this time, we should see an example for push and for pull in both the commands and in the test. So here is the code. Commands has pull and push. Good. Test commands has pull. Okay, that's good news. Let's just open up and make sure. Okay, that looks about right. And pull and push are going to be identical to make the point clear. Push says pull right now. Okay, and then now we've got it, so that's great. Now our job is in the 4th step to add the specs to allow this to look correct and to generate everything that we need to generate. So let's do that in the next video.